Hey everybody, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to go over how to format things within our spreadsheet. And specifically, I want to talk about 4 or 5 little things that you can do within your spreadsheet, things that you'll probably end up doing quite often. So they're very important. Before we get into that though, make sure you hit the subscribe button for more content like this. While you're doing that, let's switch over to my desktop and let's get into it. All right, so let's get right into it. Now let's start with merging cells. The idea behind merging cells is that we have 2 separate cells and we're going to combine them to become one larger cell. So let me show you what that looks like. I'll just pick, let's say these 2 cells right here. If I highlight them both and I go up to merge cells right here, and I have this drop down, by the way, you have some options on how you merge, but let's just click it because by default it will merge across them. You see that once I hit it, now we have one big cell. And if I click off of it, you can see there's no longer that divider between the 2. And I can just put test, 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 test. And we see that there is no divider there. It is all one cell. That's merging cells. Now, the thing that you should know about them, though, is when you merge, you can run into issues here. So, for example, I have text here. I have nerdy and tech. And I want to merge the 2. But here's the thing. If I highlight them both, and I go back to our merge button and I hit merge cells, it says heads up, merging cells will only preserve the top leftmost value. Do you want to merge anyway? So we are going to lose data doing this. If I go click OK, ouch, that's a problem. I just lost data. In this case, I just lost the word tech, but if that was something really important, I would not be happy. Now, thankfully, in our case, we can do Command Z or Control Z, depending on your platform, or we can just click our little undo button there, we get it back. But let's talk about how we can do this a different way. So merging cells, you're gonna lose data in this case, right? We are going to, it's just going to happen. Now, obviously the ideal scenario is you have a blank spreadsheet and you can just merge empty cells before you put data in it, or maybe you back up the data somewhere else and you do the merging and then kind of move it all back together. That could be a little messy. So what I wanted to show you guys is there's actually a function. So let's go ahead and merge that one back just to show you. So that was the result of merging those 2 cells. We saw this one was fine because there was no data in there. But there's also something in here, and I'm going to butcher it. It's a function, and I have had problems with this word my entire life. It's probably one of the few words in the English dictionary. And I'm a nerd, by the way. I was in the spelling bee and all that when I was a kid. There is a function called concatenate. I think I got it. And see, I ruined the whole thing just because I was so excited that I said it right. So there's that function, that word I just said correctly. And what it does is basically adds 2 things together. So kind of think about it as it's kind of like gluing them together. So what we can do is if we want these 2 to be kind of merged together in this column right here, in this cell, we can type equals, and we can spell that word, concatenate, there we go. And you see here it says appends strings to one another. It's designed for text, so I just want to throw that out there. But now if we click on it, it shows here how we can actually set up this operation. You first type your first string and then your second string of text. In our case, we want to kind of append these 2 strings together. So I'm going to actually, let's do D25, comma, and we'll do E25, comma, or I'm sorry, no comma, close that with the parentheses, we hit enter. There we go. We see now that it successfully concatenated them together and we didn't lose any data. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a possible solution to that kind of a thing you might run into. All right, let's talk about alignment. So one of the things that I've run into quite a bit is you have these larger cells because maybe you resize things for some reason, and you got the text kind of glued to the bottom there, which is really annoying and doesn't look very good. So what you can do is you can do vertical alignment to solve this problem. So all you got to do to vertically align text so it's centered in the cell like this one and not like this one is just highlight the cell, and you can go up to here to this button. It says vertical align, and we can click the drop down, and you have 3 options: align to the top of the cell, align to the middle, and to the bottom. In our case, we'll select middle. That's it. That's all there is to it. Now keep in mind the same rules apply for horizontal. We could also then go to the horizontal align And we could align that to be in the center as well, if we wanted it to truly be in the center of that cell. All right, next I want to talk about text wrapping. Text wrapping is where you have text that runs too long and then you wrap it around so it's still in the same cell, but it's not creating one just really long line. Now in this case, I put this text here that kind of illustrates the problem. I have this text that says, I'll actually highlight it right here. It says lots of text causing an issue here. The problem is, see how it bleeds over into this cell right here? Well, guess what? If I go into the cell and I say, I'll just say test, 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 hit enter, see what's happening there? I lose that text because I kind of was bleeding over into it. If I delete that text, it comes back. So it's still there, it's just hidden. So the way one way we could solve this is we could use text wrapping in Google Sheets. To do that, all we have to do is highlight the cell we want to enable wrapping on, and we can go up here to this icon, text wrapping, and we can click it and give it essentially what type of wrapping we want to do. So we can say overflow, which if I click that, does nothing. If I do wrapping, it brings us down to that next line, which is what we were looking for. So that's text wrapping in a nutshell. All right, now the last one I wanted to talk about is borders and enabling those borders within Google Sheets. So in this case, we have a really simple little table that we built here. We have name, address, we have fake names and fake addresses, I should say. Now in our case, let's say we want to enable borders on all of this. So we can highlight all of this right here. We can go up to the borders button, we click that, and we have the option for a bunch of different types of borders. We can do, we can do top border. So if I click that and I click off here, you see it enables a border at the very top of that table. We can click on it again. We can do bottom border. That enabled a line at the very bottom. And if we wanted to, we could select it all and just do all borders. And that just creates borders around the entire shape, plus in between all of the cells. So that's one way we could do it. Now you can also, if we highlight this and we go back to borders, you do have the option to specify the border color as well as the border style. So we can make it thicker lines if we wanted to. So we could say, let's do thicker lines. Let's make it red border and all borders. So you see how I had to change the border style, the weight of the border, how thick those lines were, and the color. Then I had to reapply the border. That's something to keep in mind when you're doing this. So if it doesn't apply that style immediately, just try adding that border back. All right, so the last thing I wanted to talk about before we close out this lesson is how to manage different sheets within your spreadsheets. So essentially in Microsoft Excel, you have this concept of a workbook, and within the workbook, you have multiple sheets. In our case, we have one sheet. It's called Sheet 1. If we click on this little drop down, we can click Rename. We'll call it, I'll just say Lesson 4. And we can also give it a color. So let's say change color to red. Now that's our one sheet. Now if we want to add additional sheets, we can click Add Sheet. And we have Sheet 2. Let's go ahead and change that. Let's rename it to Lesson 5, for example. We'll give it a color. Let's do blue. Okay, so you see here what happened ultimately though is we have a separate sheet. So if I click on Lesson 4, we see it goes back to this sheet. If I go to Lesson 5, we're on a separate one. They're all still within the same spreadsheet, but they're just different ways of visualizing and storing that data. So this can be a very helpful way if you have a bunch of data that belongs in the same spreadsheet, but you don't want it kind of mixed with other data. You can create additional sheets for that purpose. Now the last thing I'll point out here is if you click this little drop down by the sheets, you also have some options here. One of those is you have copy to. So you can actually take this sheet and copy it to a new spreadsheet. So you can say, I want this one sheet to go and be its own dedicated file away from everything else in this spreadsheet. So that's one option. Another thing, you saw me rename it. We could duplicate this sheet. We could create another one. I'll duplicate that. Now it says copy of lesson 4. I could also click that drop down. I can go and let's go ahead and delete that sheet. And we'll say okay. And then finally, you do have the option, if we click this drop down one last time, we have the option to also hide the sheet. And you'll see here it says use the view menu to unhide the sheet. So we don't see any kind of indication that it's here. If we go click all sheets here, we do see that there is another sheet there. If I click on lesson 5, we see it does come back. So there's a couple of ways that you can hide and unhide and that sort of thing. But I just wanted to show you guys how to kind of be able to bounce around between different sheets, because as you progress in getting better with Google Sheets, and most importantly, working with it, you'll probably want to do that. All right, that's all I got for you in this lesson. Hopefully you found this useful. As always, stay safe and healthy. Until next time, hit the subscribe button and stay nerdy.